Good evening. Thank you very much for coming this evening. My name is Ollie Forsyth. I'm the host of the Makers Podcast. I interview the most interesting entrepreneurs to find out not only have they built really interesting companies, but also how they screwed up, as not really talked about enough. And I think for us entrepreneurs, it's really important to learn those pieces of information that we can learn about. I've got three incredible entrepreneurs here this evening. The first speaker is going to be Philip Eeles, co-founder of Honest Burger, who currently sell roughly 50,000 burgers a week, I believe. Renée Elliott, the founder of Planet Organic, the first certified organic supermarkets in the UK, and Tony Wheeler, the co-founder of The Lonely Planet, probably one of the most famous travel guidebook company. So, Philip, thank you very much for being here this evening. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Good, thank you again. So, what did you have for breakfast this morning, just to kick things off? Wasn't that long ago?
God, I can't even remember. I have two young kids, so I had breakfast at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm not just saying this sound cool, I think I had granola.
You think?
But I'm not like a granola eater. I sell burgers, so I think I had granola this morning, okay. Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Cool.
What is the one thing you wish you did differently before you turned 20?
Before I turned 20? Holy shit.
Sorry for you guys to think about as well.
Oh my God.
What did I do? Yeah, I get to go first. What would I do differently before 20? Oh my God. I got a credit card when I was 18. I didn't really know what it was. And I had to take 2 gap years to pay off the debt. That was all before 20. Yeah, I was going to take one. And I just thought like, oh yeah. I just walked, Barclays duped me. I walked in and they saw I was young and I was off to do a ski season. They were like, you can get a credit card. And I was like, cool. And they were like, there's $1,000. And I was like, awesome. So I was just like buying shit. And then I had to pay my mum and dad back and take a second gap year. So that's what I would do differently.
Great. And before we move on, what is your favourite company right now, apart from Honest Burgers?
Holy shit, what's my favourite company? Food company, I've got a bit of a crush on Dishoom. They're awesome. The guy who owns it is just like Uber culture and just good people, good food. And just, yeah, super, super cool. So Dishoom is probably my restaurant crush at the moment.
Cool. So you started Honest Burger in 2011 with your two co-founders, Doreen and Tom. What was the eureka moment to launch Honest Burgers?
Yeah, it was actually 2010 without Doreen. It was me and Tom first in a tent, and that was down in Brighton. No massive eureka moment, just like I was 26, I think 27, trying to be a journalist. Did philosophy as a degree, so obviously knew exactly what I was doing in life. And we just we were working in a restaurant together in Brighton. I was struggling to be a journalist. He was doing some boring business degree. Sorry, I was doing business. And yeah, we just decided we could change the world of festival burgers. We were like, no one serves good meat at a festival in a burger, and that was what we were going to do. So we got a bit drunk in a pub, and by the end of it, had bought a marquee and a griddle and a fryer. That was 2010, April 2010. And then we quickly realised that there's a very good reason why no one serves good meat at a festival, because you absolutely don't have to. You can serve absolute shite and people still queue for it and pay a tenner. So, and you need a hell of a lot of money to do festivals, which we didn't have. So, we started the whole thing on like $6,000, $3,000 each. So we did like private pies and stuff. So no massive eureka moment other than, I didn't know, I was in that moment where what am I going to do in my life? And I realised I had to do something for myself. And I remember these conversations with Tom about starting a burger thing, and I was like, sorry, what have I got to lose? Just crack on and do it.
And take us back to those early days. You were hustling, grinding at festivals.
Yeah.
What were some of those biggest challenges back in the early days?
It's just really hard to make money out of street food. That is the honest truth. I get asked a lot now from people who want to start street food businesses, and I do my best to tell them to do it, but get out of it as quickly as possible, because it can really, you've got to work 14 hours a day to make any money every day, lugging everything you go. So yeah, it was a tough year for sure. Like, we probably did 15 to 20 events, parties, that kind of stuff. It was like a hobby. I was working full time. I was managing a restaurant in Brighton by that point, and taking days off to do the business. But yeah, just actually trying to make money was tough. Like, we didn't make any in that first year at all. Like, we had queues everywhere we went, and people liked the food, but we never really figured out the business side of it at that point. So it was good fun, but we weren't successful, I would say, in that setup, for sure.
So what makes a great burger? There's an honest burger around the corner, by the way, so...
Yeah, it's quite a new one. It could do with a few more sales, so if you could all go there for lunch, that'd be...
Dinner.
Are you offering a discount?
It's on our list of could do better, that one. So, yeah, if you can get in there, that'd be great. What makes a good burger? The epiphany for us was that no one seems to focus on good meat, or didn't, right? And, you know, I get people say to me all the time, oh, McDonald's, and I'm like, I've got no problem with McDonald's. It's not McDonald's we're trying to kill here. You know, you pay 99p for a burger, you know, you get what you pay for, right? And McDonald's are an actually amazing company as well. But it's the pub burger that we thought is total shite. You know, people pay 15 quid for something that is still frozen, lacking in flavour, over minced, one textured. They throw a tomato in it, a bit of lettuce, and a focaccia bun maybe, and then you get charged 15 quid for that. So that's the thing that we were like, you don't have to have that, and you can pay less and get proper good meat. So for us from day one, it was just find really good cuts of beef, only beef. Well, that just went up a notch. So I went like that. There we go. Yeah, really good cuts of beef, just nice and simple. Serve it medium rare, medium. Homemade chips, homemade food. Keep it simple. But yeah, it just felt like no one was focusing on the meat, which seemed obvious to us. I don't know why no one else was doing that.
You mentioned a while ago, just a minute ago, about some of the early challenges.
Yep.
But now, 8 years on, you are generating £22 million in revenue, 50,000 burgers a week, about 150 employees. How have you...
650 employees.
Sorry?
650. Did you say 150 or
50,000 burgers.
Yeah, 650 employees.
650 now.
Yeah.
How have you learned to maintain those challenges as you've grown?
Yeah, it's definitely got harder, harder in different ways. Like at the start, it's very physical, like that first year in the tent, and then the first year when we opened Brixton, just like working every hour, like physically broken, all of us for most of the time. And then it becomes a bit more kind of mentally difficult. Without doubt, people is the hardest thing. Getting the right people and managing people properly is just the hardest thing. I think there was a period in terms of sort of mistakes and stuff. Someone very clever told me when it comes to restaurants and opening and rolling out kind of a restaurant concept, there's this rule of kind of 7, which is like you sort of go in 7s. And if you get the wrong side of it, you can really make some mistakes. And I was the ops director for a long time, and we got to 14. And the theory is basically when you get to 14, when you hit 15, you should treat 15 like 21. Otherwise, by the time you get to 21, you're massively behind. I definitely didn't do that. So we got to sort of 18 or 19, and I was like, holy shit, like, we need more area managers, we need more training people, we need to change this system, that system doesn't work anymore. And of course, if you want to bring senior people in, there's a recruitment period, they have a 3-month notice period, then you have to train them. So before you even get anything out of these people, you're talking 6 months. So there was a period of about a year and a half where I was massively behind and sort of running to catch up. And we made, a few mistakes in those times. But now it's just about sort of empowering people, trusting people to do it. And just like, basically my job now is culture. So if I think people are getting the wrong thing, I just hit them with a culture stick. I get called a grenade launcher quite a lot. I just sort of walk into meetings and go, what about this? And then walk out again. So that's kind of my role now. And that's the hardest thing for me now is I'm quite hands-on and I'm very passionate about what we stand for, and I have to kind of let people do it, but at the same time, make sure it's being done. Does that make sense?
And what's next? How big can you take this?
I think we can go really, really big. Obviously, we want to go around the country a little bit. We've hit a few. We've got 5 out of London now. We're doing Liverpool in about 3-4 weeks. Cardiff after that. I think the days of opening 70 to 80 restaurants around the country are over. I don't think you can get away with that anymore. I think there's a few reasons for that. But for me, it's what can we do besides burgers now? So Honest has a way of doing and a way of thinking, and hopefully if you've eaten our restaurants, you've picked that up on that a little bit. And I think that's transferable. So, for us, it's about disrupting a little bit and hopefully going into places that we feel like needs that kind of honest treatment. So, like, I really want to do honest trains, for example. Like, I'm obsessed, trains are shite, and, I don't understand why you have to pay on-peak and off-peak ticket price for the same seat and the same journey. And I feel like if Honest did it, we could show the world that you don't have to do that and still make money. So it's things like that kind of, trains, planes, pizza maybe first, or chicken, probably something food first. But something else besides burgers, I think, is probably. Right. I'd like us to be like maybe in a year's time at a property meeting to go, right, this town, is it an Honest Burgers or is it a reduced version of Honest Burgers? Is it like a pub? Is it, what is this town? What should it be? Because you can't just do the same thing anymore in every town. I think you'll have seen lots of restaurants struggling at the moment and closing restaurants, and I think that's because they've sort of kept it too samey in the wrong places.
So you're thinking about Honest Trains. Are you looking
I am. I mean, if the rest of our shareholders are listening to this, they'll be cringing right now. But I'm very much thinking that at some point I'd like us to be able to do other things, yeah.
So are you looking to sell Honest Burgers?
No. I mean, we've got private equity already, and we'll do another deal pretty soon, I think. But yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
Not yet.
No, not yet. No. I mean, I've got no plans to do anything else right now. So.
Amazing. Well, Renée, if I can come on to you. First of all, thanks so much for being here. How are you doing?
Good to see you.
Thank you so much as well. So, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I couldn't remember when you first asked me. I was up at 5 this morning. So I had my bread. I make all of our bread, and I had a yeasted spelt bread toasted with. I don't normally have sugar, but it was so early I thought I needed a bit of sweet. So I had Manuka honey and tahini mixed together on the bread.
Interesting.
Really good for you.
I'll have to try it. And what is the one thing you wish you did before you turned 20?
I wish I'd learned ballet.
Okay.
But I'm thinking of starting this year.
Are you?
Actually, yeah.
Go for it.
Ballet for adults.
And what is your favorite company right now, apart from Planet, and your latest company?
Thank you. It's a tricky question. And when people ask things like that, I often go completely blank. I can't even think of where do I shop, where do I eat, where do I... But I think my favorite at the moment is Le Pain Quotidien. And I find myself, if I want to sit down and I want a matcha, I go there. If I want food, I go there because they do ancient grains, they do gluten-free, they do a lot of organic. And I love that the center of the restaurant is that big round table because it's about community. And I think that's really cool.
So you launched Planet in 1995, 2 years before I was born. Always, not that long ago.
As my kids say, in the olden days.
In the olden days. Having seen it done on the East Coast of America in particular, why did you want to launch Planet and what was the eureka moment?
I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I moved to England when I was 21 out of university. I won't say why. And I worked as a journalist because I was an English major, and I was really great, but it wasn't my calling. And I knew when I was 19 that I had the power to persuade and lead, and I was a very passionate person. So I decided at my first job in England that I should have my own company and do something great because I feel very passionately about a life well led and a life well spent. I didn't want to get to the end of my life and think, really? That was it? So I was on this kind of spiritual mission, but I didn't know what that was. So I worked as a journalist, and then I was back in America, and I was on the East Coast of America and saw an organic supermarket. And it was a eureka moment for me because food in America, historically, the supermarkets are pretty cruddy. And I'd also, at university, studied nutrition alongside English. And I was really horrified to realize at 19, I read a book about the meat industry in America, and I couldn't believe how badly the cattle were raised, the land was treated, there was no respect for the environment, the soil, the animals, and I felt for me as a person. And I couldn't believe that someone wasn't looking after my best interests. And I was really shocked because I was a naive and trusting kid. And I thought, wow, they've duped my mom, who's bought it and cooked it. They've duped me. And I was so angry that I became a vegetarian because organic was not an option then. But it started this idea for me of, let's do it better. And better means, generally, doesn't mean what most people are doing. So I've started this, how do we do things better? What's a better way? And when I saw this organic supermarket, I thought, well, that's better. And no one's doing that in England. So I decided to open a chain of organic supermarkets to curate products so that people could trust, because trust and respect are really important to me. And that was where the product was respecting the land, the animals, the farmer, the person eating it, and that was a theme running all the way through.
So very similar to what Anita Roddick did for the Body Shop. When you started Planet, were people talking about organic foods back in 95?
No, we were a little ahead of our time. So we opened it on November 4th, and by Christmas I thought we were going down. And I had just turned 30, so I thought, okay, if it flops, I'm young enough to start again. I believed in following my dream, and if it didn't work, trying something else. But I was really scared by December, and we had bills coming in that I didn't have the money to pay, contractors' bills and supplier bills, and I had to pay my team. I had no money to pay my team, so it was looking pretty dodgy. And then in February, there was a BSE scare. And what we needed was something like that to wake people up, get them thinking about where their food was come from, about provenance and sustainability. And that put us on the map, where our sales jumped. Later that year, it was the E. coli scare with Edwina Curry. So our first year out of Westbourne Grove, we did 1.2 million, and then that doubled to 2.4 the next year. So we took off. But I didn't know what I was doing. I was an English major. So it was like riding a racing horse.
But take us back to those early days. You opened your first supermarket. How did you get people through the door in the first couple
Well, that
of
was
months?
the problem, because we didn't advertise. I had just read Anita Roddick's book, and she was my role model as a successful, disrupting woman. So I thought, well, I'm not going to advertise because I don't believe in that. And it seemed to me that the products, certainly then, that advertised were rubbish. You know, I grew up watching adverts in America for Crest toothpaste and for deodorants, and it was all junk. So I thought, good products don't advertise, it's word of mouth. So nobody knew we were there. So we were not turning anything over. So it was when that mad cow disease hit, we had hired a PR company to get editorial, because we had a really great story to tell. We just needed to get the word out to the public, and that got us press. My business partner at the time, was very cool and trendy, very well known. So he got press, and we got press because of the meat thing, and then we got press with the E. coli thing, and then it was word of mouth, and we really took off. But we were the Mecca. There weren't 10 shops there. The supermarkets weren't selling organic, so everyone came to Planet Organic.
And again, you raised a bit of money to get the business going, but it was very hard to raise money. You've had it done in the US. How did you convince your investors to commit?
Well, they didn't want to, because the concept was completely untested. And we had photos of what we were trying to create. We'd taken photos of supermarkets in the States. But I remember one investor looking at the business plan, and he said, so it's like a really big Holland and Barrett. And I said, absolutely not. We had a full-service meat counter. We had lots of fresh fruit and veg, frozen, health and body care, first juice bar in the country. So it was impossible. And after trawling around for quite a while, and I don't even think there were really angel investors then, or not any that we knew of. It was really my partner's father's friends who invested, and my best girlfriend, and then an organic farmer.
And that's how it got going.
That was it.
And you mentioned your co-founder earlier. You were faced with quite a long legal battle. Can you tell us about that story?
Yeah, so the entrepreneurial journey isn't always easy. It doesn't mean it's not worth doing. I believe that anything worth having is hard work, and that's whether it's a business, marriage, kids. Who here has kids? Yeah, all the exhausted-looking people. So hard work is important, and there are ups and downs. And the worst challenge I faced was 2 years after Planet started, when I said we hit 2.4 million. My business partner decided that I should leave and he should have the company. And when he didn't really say why, and I was like, but it's my baby, because I really saw Planet as my baby, and I had no intention of having children. So I was very shocked. Long story short, he brought charges against me. I went to my lawyer and said, what do I do? And they said, countersue. I had no money because it was all in the business. And my lawyer said, it'll probably cost around 50 or 60,000 pounds, which for me in those days was a massive amount of money. I mean, it still is, but then it was like, I wasn't even paying myself at that point, so it was awful. And we got to a point with the lawyers where they had a second lien on the house because we ran out of money. and it was awful. And my partner was trying to make it very expensive quickly with pre-trials because they knew I had no money. And it ended up after 14 months of litigation, in a 10-day trial in the high courts. And he lost his case against me, and this is what had to happen. I won my case against him, and then the judge ruled in my favor. And my orders were that if I won, he would sell me his shares, and these shareholders would sell their shares, his friends and father's friends. And that's what happened. But the thing for me about that is business is tough. It's not always that tough. But what I learned on that journey is that you have to take care of yourself, and you have to put yourself first. And some people think, oh, yeah, of course. But how many women find that really comfortable? I'm going to put myself first. Raise your hands. Really? Okay. How many women find that not very comfortable? Yeah. We're the caretakers. I'm not saying you guys find it easy to put yourself first, but normally when I ask, the men's hands go up, oh, yeah, I can put myself first. But women are, we're biological caretakers, and it's not a comfortable thing. And we often spend our time taking care of other people. So when you say put yourself first, it's counterintuitive. But if you don't take care of yourself, you can't do anything well. You can't do your job or run your business or look after your own kids or your mother or your husband, whatever. You can't. I always say if you want to be brilliant, you have to feel brilliant. And to feel brilliant, you have to take care of yourself in all the different spheres of well-being, from physical through to spiritual. But it wasn't easy. So I went to ground, and I ate even better than I was eating. I stopped drinking, I meditated twice a day, I exercised, and I surrounded myself only with really positive people. And I read the Bhagavad Gita, which is an ancient Hindu script. I read Sun Tzu's Art of War. I prepared. The core message of Art of War is know thy enemy, which I did. And so I worked hard. My motto is work hard, do good. And I won, thank God. And then I asked my husband to work with me because I didn't trust anyone after that.
The bus guy, we'll come on to that.
And we ran the business together for 10 years, which was really fantastic.
But going back to the legal case, it cost you, what did it
Oh,
cost
yeah.
you? It cost the
So
other
my
guy.
final bill in the end was, and I knew heading into the trial that for me I was looking at bankruptcy if I lost. My legal bill was £560,000 because it was all about data, and there were files and files of data. But I'm a detail person, which is why I went into retail. And I knew the documents, I studied, I knew numbers of, I won it by saying on document number 2856, if I can take you to that document. But yeah, I would have been wiped out. But in England, loser pays. So his father picked up my legal bill and his legal bill.
Great. And in some cases, you probably thought about giving up, and you were probably really low. How did you pick yourself up the next day and days and say to yourself, I'm not going to let this guy defeat me?
So as well as taking care of myself, I said I surrounded myself with positive people. And part of that was I had people I relied on through that time. So my best friend Julia used to come every week, once a week, and take me out to lunch and let me just bleh. And I would sometimes sit at the table and cry. We'd have lunch together. And just because I was so stressed. I was in fight, flight, freeze for 14 months. I was so stressed. And I talked to my sister a lot, my sister Lauren, who was a real support for me, and my parents. And my husband, I don't know how he saw me through that, but he would get up at 5. We'd get up at 5, meditate for an hour, go to work. Then after work, we'd go to the lawyer's office, usually, and strategize. And then we'd get home. I'd meditate and go to bed. And he was doing his MBA. So he'd stay up till God knows when. So it was finding supportive people and really, really taking care of myself. I really got that lesson. But the other lesson I learned was trust my gut. Trust myself and listen to myself. Because when I first met this guy, and I'm not saying I would change that, I believe in fate and destiny. But when I met him, there was a little red flag. And I thought, oh, it'll be all right. I hadn't necessarily been brought up to trust myself. I was used to canvassing other people's opinions. But anyway, I also got to a point that summer where I thought, oh my God, I don't think I can do this anymore. And everyone, well-meaning people who love me, were telling me what to do. You should do this, take the money. They kept offering me money for my shares. Take the money and run, start another business, do this. And I was like, I just wanted to go, la, 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 la. I couldn't even think about what I wanted. And I'm a Libra, so there's no way I could make a decision. When I do the pros and cons, they're always perfectly balanced. So I thought, I have to get out. I have to get away, even from my family. So I went off for a weekend in the Lake District with a girlfriend of mine. And I said, just come, my girlfriend Julia, I said, come with me. I need to just stop. And we walked for days, and I was waiting for divine inspiration and praying and doing whatever. Nothing. And on the Sunday night, I had like an hour left, and I thought, oh my God, please God. And we were sitting by this lake, and the water was kind of, the ripples were coming on the water. And I thought, I just visualized the future. And I thought, if I walk away, I'll never know if I could have won or lost. Whereas if I stay and I fight to the end and I lose, I will accept that with grace and dignity because I believe in destiny, but I may win. So I stuck it out, and here I am.
Amazing. Well, on a slightly more positive note, we've known each other a couple of years now, and what I've always admired about you, you've managed to find that work-life balance for your family and kids. How have you managed to do that?
It's a tightrope I walk. I stepped away from Planet in 2009 because even though I said I'd never have children when I married my husband, I decided when I was 37 that I was aching to be pregnant. It was like someone reached inside and flipped a switch. So I had a kid at 37, a kid at 40, and one at 43. And then I thought, I'm done. And oh my God, I cannot do both of these things because what you give attention to flourishes. And I was split between the business and the kids, and I was really ripped apart. So after being very stressed and trying to figure out what to do, because when I set Planet up, I was creating meaningful work that I could do for the rest of my life. That was my goal. And I thought it was something that maybe my kids would do. But when I hit this juncture, I thought, I have to choose. So I stepped away from Planet. I didn't step out in 2009 so that I could raise the kids. My husband stepped out completely. And I took some time out just to be with them, and it was a very sweet chapter. We went to Italy for a few years and just really powered down and lived the dream, grew vegetables and olives and made olive oil and all that. But then I came back to England and started working again, and I thought, how do I keep the balance? So it's very much about boundaries, about being clear about when I'm with the kid. And I say I'm 50% mom first. I'm a mom first, and then I'm a businesswoman. It's about boundaries that when I'm with them, I'm only with them. I'm not trying to work. It's taken me ages to figure this out. And when I'm at work, I'm really focused on my work. And if that balance swings either way, I have to readjust. Because if I start doing too much work, I go into guilt, which is a stupid emotion. And if I am at home too much, I go into resentment, which makes me quite cranky, and nobody likes that. So I'm constantly readjusting, but it works. But I feel like I'm always spinning plates.
And just before I ask my second last question, you met your husband, the bus guy, similar to Tony's story, on a night bus on Regent Street. Tell us about the story.
So I was here between my third and fourth year at university with my sister and a girlfriend, and I didn't really want to be in England. I didn't see it as a foreign country because you guys speak the same language. I wanted to be in Italy and Spain and Greece, but we came to England, and So, okay, this was a long time ago, probably before a lot of y'all were born, looking at you. I was 20, and we went out clubbing at the Hippodrome. Does anyone remember when the Hippodrome was a disco? Yeah, I was a disco babe. And we stayed out way too late. And then we came out, and we went to the Tube, and it was gated. And I thought, shit, what do we do? So I went up to this policeman, and I said, how do we get to... We were staying in Dagenham, if you can believe it. I know. That was terrifying. We were staying at a church in Dagenham because my mom was a member of the same church in America. So he said, go to Trafalgar Square and get a night bus. So we went to Trafalgar Square, got on this bus. It was just the three of us on the bus. And it was going to Barking. It was the N15 to Barking. It wasn't going where we wanted to go. But he said, it's the nearest you're going to get. So it went one stop to Lower Regent Street. The doors open, and there's tall, dark, and handsome in a suit. And he said, is this going to, where was he going? To Hornchurch. And the driver said, no, it's going to Barking. And we said, get on. We don't know where we're going. Help us at the other end. So we talked this guy on the bus. We chatted the whole way home. He said, let's get together for a drink. And that's the guy I've been with for 34 years. That's Brian.
So, your latest company, Believe Bean, Why did you want to launch Beluga Bean? And again, what was the idea behind it?
So when I started Planet Organic, it was really about well-being, because for me, it's all about doing things better, as I said, and for me, better starts with, and well-being starts with the foundation of health. Because if you have your health, you can go out into the world and do what you want, follow your dreams. You can be the most talented person in the world, but if you don't feel well, you're not going to get out there and do anything. So for me, it started with well-being in terms of health. But over the decades, I've developed well-being in what I call the 6 spheres. So physical, occupational, psychological, economic, social, and spiritual. And for me, it's about how do I make it better? And Beluga Bean is an academy for life skills and business skills across these 6 spheres. And it's about making life better, life and business. So we look for pinch points in life and business, and we have courses, or we sit around a table and have breakfast and talk about how to make it better, because everything we do is a whole person process. So on the business side, the main course we run, for example, is Launch, which takes entrepreneurs from concept through the business planning process to launch. And I love the business plan. But everything we do is about the whole person, because I can't talk to you just as a business person. So it's 50% business, 50% personal development, because you will face your worst and best parts of yourself on this journey. And my idea is to empower you to flip negative thinking, change patterns, get over yourself, build your self-esteem to be the most powerful entrepreneur that you can be, and to support you on that journey and stop you from making some of the clangers that I made when I was running a business. So it's an academy, and the way that we operate, really, the main thing we do at the moment is we have a breakfast twice a month, and there's a little card on your seat that says, come to first event free. So we run a Life Connect and a Business Connect once a month, and we talk about a pinch point in life or a pinch point in business, and we sit around a table. It's a conversation. It's not me lecturing. It's a conversation so that we can put problems on the table and create solutions. And the reason people come is it's about finding support and inspiration in your month. And I love the work. But we're also building out courses for the future, everything from how to go into early motherhood and not go into postpartum depression. So we look for these pain points in life. But our motto is make it better, whether it's your business, communicating with your partner, or your dinner, how to make it better.
And as well as this, very quickly, but you've just written another book.
Oh, you're so
And
sweet.
that.
So
Might as well.
I have a book called What to Eat and How to Eat It, because there are a lot of voices out there telling you lots of things on the internet and everything, and sometimes it's hard to navigate through what voice you can trust and what's an authority, and Planet is such an authority in the field, and I've been doing this for 25, 30 years. So it's a book, it's 99 ingredients that you should eat more of, and it's not superfoods, it's mainly things like broccoli and beetroot and grains and all the foods that you should eat more of, but also how to prepare them. Ollie loves this book. It's on his bedside table. He reads it every week.
Do you remember? Yeah, buy one.
And it's things like, and I think the most valuable thing about it is it's not only about the foods, but if you buy an ingredient that you like, say you buy quinoa. Okay, so who eats quinoa? Great.
Wow.
Who soaks it before they eat it? Okay, yeah, you should. So it's about best practice in terms of eating the ingredient, and then it's about 10 or 12 other, we do a recipe, but then there are 10 or 12 ideas of how to use the ingredients. So if you buy a bag of this stuff, you make my recipe and think, oh, I loved that, but I don't want it again, or I hated that. There are other ideas of how to use this ingredient, how to incorporate it into your life.
Love it. Thank you so much. Tony, how's it going?
Very well.
Good, thank you.
What did I have for breakfast this morning?
You already know. Go for it.
I'm extraordinarily tedious when I'm at home, that I always have muesli and half a grapefruit.
Okay.
And what did I have this morning? I had muesli and half a grapefruit.
And what is the one thing you wish you did before you turned 20?
The next lifetime, I'm going to spend a lot more effort on learning languages. Of all the things that at school, I was one of those people who was pretty good at everything, but not fantastic at anything. But the thing I was worst at was languages. And languages was the thing that really should have been the most important thing in my life. And I really regret that. So yeah, next lifetime, languages.
Great. And what is your favorite company right now?
Exactly the same thing. I've had some warning on this. And it's a company that I own a little tiny share of, so it's really hardly fair. Because I met these, they're all male, I hate to say, they're techies, and they build drones. And they've got XM2, and they build big drones. They started with little ones, and the biggest ones now, Star Wars uses them, the latest, the things where you need to lift 2 3D cameras at once. And it started off, they'd build a new drone, and they'd say, Tony, come around and look at this. And I'd come around, and I was an engineer once upon a time, and I would say, wow. And my enthusiasm sort of, they liked it. And I ended up putting a little money into it.
Great. Well, before that, you started the Lonely Planet in 1972 with your wife, Maureen. What was the idea behind it?
We were living in London, we left London in mid-72, July the 4th. It was US Independence Day. In a car that we'd paid £65 for, that we thought we'll just drive it as far as it goes. And as far as it goes was Afghanistan, where we sold it for a £5 profit, as one does.
A Mini, right?
A Mini, yeah. And I've always said, it was Osama bin Laden's getaway vehicle, and if they'd been able to track that, they would have saved themselves a lot of trouble. And then we called it the Asia Overland Trip, but later on it became known as the Hippie Trail, and it eventually took us all the way to Australia. And then we thought, someone needs to do a book about this. Because the information just wasn't available, and that book was the first Lonely Planet guidebook.
And you've just done another trip, the other way back?
The other way back, yeah. In fact, you can still do this. A couple of years ago, I met again, some ridiculous, crazy people, and one of them, who I've known for quite a long time, said, Tony, guess what I'm doing next year? And I said, what? He said, I'm driving a 40-year-old MG from Bangkok to London. It's going to take 4 months. And I said, oh, that sounds really good. He said, yeah, there's 7 of us, and we can get 4 cars into a shipping container to ship them up from Australia to the starting point. So that we've got 2 shipping containers, so there's 1 space free. All you have to do is go out and buy an MG. So, you find them immediately. There's lots of old MGs around. That's why they're not worth very much. There's so many of them. So I went out the next day and bought an MG and gave it to someone and said, fix this car, it has to drive to London, which he did. And we shipped them all to Bangkok and started from there. And 4 months later, we arrived in London. And it was a great trip.
Well, it really started, I guess, when you met Maureen. Very similar to Renée.
I know,
in Regent's Park.
That's a good story. I don't know if you've... Regent's Park, so, not too far away.
But she was sitting on the other side of the bench.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I was sitting... I just walked through this park on a Thursday afternoon, October the 7th. And I sat down on this park bench. I just finished being an engineer and gone back to university to do an MBA. And, I was still had engineering in my head, and I picked up a car magazine, sat down on the park bench to read this magazine, late afternoon sun, a bit of it left in October, and this beautiful woman came along and sat down on the other end of the park bench and started reading Tolstoy's Boyhood, Childhood, and Youth. I mean, there I was put in my place, and I picked her up. And, and we got married a year to the day later. And we're still together, remarkably. I don't know how she puts up with me.
And when you both met, did you think about traveling the world together?
Yeah, for some reason that, we just started, you meet lots of people. And I remember, I did when I'm very old. So I'm back to the days when people used to hitchhike places. And I did lots of hitchhiking. And then when I got a car, I started picking up hitchhikers. I picked up lots of hitchhikers. And, you'd find some of them, it was really hard to get a conversation going. And others, you had so much to talk about. You'd said, I'm going to turn off at exit 7 or something. And because the conversation was, and they were heading to exit 14, you'd say, oh, hell, I'll just go down to exit 14, So, and that was like how it was with Maureen and I. We just sat down and started talking, and travel came up. Although I'd traveled a bit already, and she hadn't.
But you left London, I think, with £400.
Yeah.
Were you not worried about running out of money?
Oh, absolutely. But I've been worried about running out of money all my life. I don't worry about it anymore at all. Maureen does. She said, we could lose it all. No, we can't.
But take us back to those early days. The Lonely Planet has now sold over 150 million books.
Yeah.
How did you sell your first 10 books or 100 books?
Well, the very first ones, we both had we were living in Sydney, and we'd set off around the world, drive the car to Afghanistan, carry on, work in Australia, because at that point you could just turn up in Australia. You didn't need a visa or anything. We'd work in Australia for 3 months. We'll save up enough money to come back to London. But then we had so much fun. You know, the thing was just, it was great. And we thought, no, let's spend a year in Australia. And so instead of a 1-year trip around the world, it was a 3-year trip around the world. And during that year, we did this first book. We both had full-time jobs. You know, we were living on one salary and saving the other one. And our idea, what we were going to do, we'd have enough money to travel for a year. But then, during that year, so many people asked us all the questions that ended up prompting us to start Lonely Planet. So we did this, and this is long before computers, and we didn't even have our own typewriter. Maureen used to bring her typewriter home from work on the weekends, and I'd be there drawing maps, and she'd be typing the book out on our basement apartment table. And we put the book together, and I took a day off work and went around bookshops. That first book was only ever sold in Australia and New Zealand. And I went around bookshops selling it, and, people bought it. The bookshops said, I've never seen anything like this before. We'll take 10 copies, or 15, or 20 even. And before we knew it, we'd sold out all the ones we'd printed, and we went back and printed some more, and then we printed some more again, and then we thought, this is fun. Maybe we can make a business out of this. And then we set off to do the second book, which was a much more serious. The first one just happened, we traveled, we wrote a book about it. But the second one, we set off with the intention of doing a guidebook.
So you traveled the world. What is the one country you still haven't been to?
Yemen. I so greatly regret that I've never been to Yemen. This amazing mud skyscrapers, and people who speak languages say it's the purest form of Arabic, and and the country's a disaster at the moment due to us and America supplying weapons to the appalling Saudis for them to bomb people.
The Lonely Planet was sold over 10 years ago now to the BBC. What was the feeling when you sold? Was it a relief? Or?
Yeah, we sold for a bunch of reasons. One was our kids. Neither of them were going. They both worked in the business for a while, but neither of them were going to take it over and run it. And we hadn't sort of groomed them to be the new business bosses. If they enjoyed it, they enjoyed it. If they didn't, they didn't. So it wasn't going to be a family dynasty. And I've always said, if you're going to be doing anything, you've got to be really passionate about it. You've got to really believe you have the best burgers and the best organic food. You've got to believe in what you're doing 100%. And I did. We loved it the whole time. But at that time, it was beginning to shift more into the digital world. And although I'm on the internet as much as anybody else, and I put money into Wikipedia every year. And I believe in all these things, but it was not my first passion. I love those books that you turned over and researched and went to weird places. So it was sort of moving out of my passion zone. And we were getting older. So we just thought, it's time. And there were no shortage of people who wanted to buy it. So, we thought, time to sell.
And when you did sell, obviously the online books is now a massive thing. Did you see that coming?
Oh, yeah, we saw it coming. I mean, we were in the internet really early on. O'Reilly, the San Francisco Bay Area people who were really pioneers in, I know Tim O'Reilly. We did the word blog hadn't been invented, but 94, Maureen and I drove across America in an old Cadillac that really had no brakes to speak of, that had a cigarette lighter for every seat. This car had 6 cigarette lighters in it. Amazing, and neither of us smoked, and even my kids didn't smoke at that stage. And we did a daily blog. We sent this blog back to Tim in the Bay Area, and he had a thing called Global Network Navigator, which was a really pioneering website. So yeah, we were in it early on, but it wasn't our baby.
Well, if I can come back to all of you, you all had co-founders in your companies. Philip, if I start with you, do you think having a co-founder is the right thing to have?
I'd be careful to tell anyone that you have to have one, but I certainly wouldn't have done it. I don't think I could have done it without him or Dorian. The three of us really. We all brought something slightly different to the table, and I think if I was left to my own, I'd do a lot of random, spontaneous stuff. So I think it's really important that you've got people that can just check your worst impulses, but also let you do the good things that you are good at. So I would 100% recommend if you're starting a business, you should get someone alongside you to help you do it. But they have to share the same values. I think that's the most important thing. Like me and Tom are mates, but we're not like, we describe us, it sounds a bit cheesy, we describe ourselves a bit more like brotherly because we argue a hell of a lot. We're certainly not best mates, but when it comes to the important stuff, and what we do is meant to be really simple. So there's only 3 or 4 things that we're really like, you don't mess with this thing, a part of our business. And on those things, we're very, very aligned. And certainly as it's got bigger and we have shareholders and stuff, you know, when we come together on those things, we're pretty unstoppable. So, yeah, how things are delivered and various other sort of smaller decisions, we can go off on tangents a little bit. But when it comes to the big stuff, we're very much aligned. So I hugely recommend having someone alongside you.
Renee?
I love collaboration. Even though it went wrong with my first partner, I then worked with my husband, and I have a partner in my second business. And I like working with men. I like the male-female dynamic. I think values is key, as you said. You have to be aligned in terms of your values. And for me, it all comes down to what I call the sacred triangle of relationships, which is trust and respect, underpinned by good communication. And for me, I couldn't have a partnership if I didn't have that triangle. Absolutely.
Anthony?
Well, Maury and I started the business together. You know, we're still together now, so something obviously works. But we found after a while that really, although I had the MBA, she was the more business-like person. You know, I was the sort of creative side of the business, and she was the one, and particularly when we came to selling it, you know, she was doing all the hard miles, and I really was not. I was slacking off in lots of ways. So, you know, we did sort of have our own roles, and they did work together. But then later on, we had quite early on, we had a third partner in it, a guy who we're still good friends with today, Jim Hart. And he came in because it was a travel business, and the thing is we couldn't be traveling and running the business. And if we sat at home and ran the business, we weren't traveling. So, you know, we had this real problem. And Jim was the guy who sat at home and ran the business. And our relationship with Jim was sort of up and down at stages, but overall it worked really well. And he was totally trustworthy. We did see eye to eye. And, you know, we had disputes at times, but it went all the way until he decided he wanted to leave. And then we had to get somebody else in. And we had a very colourful time with you know, and I still look back and think, how the hell did that work? But it worked very well with our final partner. So what do you know? There's a guy who'd been married, no, he hadn't been married 8 times, but there had been 8 women who had a major role in his life, some of whom, one became Miss Universe. I mean, God, what do you know? He was a full-time character. And, you know, he was never less than hilarious. And all his wives and ex-wives still really like him. You know, even though he cheated on them, went on to the next one. And they still say good things about him, so he must have done something right.
Okay, well, there you go.
Don't know what to say about that.
No, nor do I.
But part of the event this evening is to learn about screw-ups. Can you share with us one screw-up you've had that you wish you didn't make, that maybe you can give that piece of advice to an entrepreneur before we ask the audience their questions? Philip, can I start with you again?
Are you going to start with me?
Yeah.
Lots of silly ones, and certainly at the start, just not really knowing what we were doing with the tent and stuff. I mean, we accepted a job at Lewis Fireworks Night. I don't know if anyone's been to Lewis Fireworks Night, but it basically gets taken over. I think it's where Guy Fawkes was born or something. Anyway, there's like fire barrels in the street and people throw, you know, bombs around and stuff. It's meant to get like 250 people to attend the thing. And we managed to get a pitch there like 2 days before the event via Gumtree, which was mistake 1 because Gumtree is good for sofas and tables. It's not good for getting catering jobs. But we were super excited. We thought we'd landed it big time. We put the postcode into the sat-nav, packed up the van, drove into Lewis, sort of drove out of Lewis, ended up into this field on top of a hill, nowhere near Lewis. And it turned out basically a farmer had just opened his gate and said, serve some burgers here, next to a massive fire. And like the weather just like killed us. And we're trying to set up a tent, obviously. I never forget this guy was selling donuts as well, and he just drove in with his van, opened his hatch and turned his light on, and just went, right, lads. I'm like holding down the marquee, like trying to chop cheese. But basically the problem was, because the marquee had sides, obviously, but the wind was so strong, it was like buffeting this thing, so we thought, right, we'll take the sides off, and that'll create like a wind tunnel. But of course, that knocked all the gas pilot lights out. And there was probably 150 people there wanting food, probably all the farmers' mates, and we had a few people wanting some food. You put a portion of chips down, turn around, and be like, they just got it. So we were like, what are we going to do? Like, we couldn't get the fryer was on and off for about 45 minutes. And I think it was Tom's idea we thought, well, we'll pick up the fryer and we'll put it in the back of the van, and we'll serve and the grill, and he'll cook from the van in the shelter, and I'll serve the customers. So we picked this fryer up, which is, you can probably see where this is going, full of oil, and Tom's about a foot taller than me as well, so we were sort of hobbling. I never forget looking around at customers waiting for food, just being like, what are you doing? So sort of hobbling this thing over, and sort of goes to that, hoist it into the van, and of course the oil starts moving. It's like slow motion, right? So this wave of oil comes towards me, and I'm like, shit, like this. It goes back towards Tom, and he's like, shit, like this. Doesn't hit him, and the next one I know I'm fucked, sorry. And I'm like, this is coming, and it goes all over me like this. So obviously I freak out. I think I've lost my face, basically. Have you seen Ricky Bobby, Talladega Nights, when he thinks he's on fire? I think it was I'm like, give me blue roll, like this on my face. I think it's so painful that I can't feel it. Tom's put his finger in the oil and it's lukewarm. It's not even that hot. But I'm like, shit, I've got oil in my face. So anyway, we'd actually get it back in the van, and we actually got it working, and we served some food. We didn't make any money, but we covered our costs. It was a year of basically do a job, empty the account. And I literally remember this. I think I tell this story and people think I'm making it up. I remember vividly checking the account on the way to Lewis, and we had 70 quid left in the account. So we were like, we need to make some money out of this, or at least cover our costs. So I think we sold some food and had enough money to do the next one, but that was pretty stupid.
Tony, how about we go with you next?
If there was one thing that I should have done better at the very beginning, with all those early books we did, we could have made them more expensive. Back when they were $2.95 and $3.95 and $4.95, they all could have been $3.95 and $4.95 and $5.95, and everyone would have bought just the same number of them, and it would have made life much easier. If I can turn the clock back, I just put the prices up. Charge what the market will bear is the message. If you're doing something, there's no. You've got the only one. Nobody else has got one. If people want it, they'll pay for it.
Very wise. Renée?
Well, I think the thing that's been tricky for me is having shareholders. And, it's a complicated relationship. It's up and down. But I mentor a lot of startups, and I do advise generally not to take on investment if you don't need to. And sometimes it's about speed and scale. So people say, well, I want to be big, fast. And then, yeah, you have to. But often if I drill down into what the purpose of the business is and the length of time that people see themselves working in it, they say, because often I work with a lot of women, I work with men as well, but I work with a lot of women, and often they say, I want a business that I can run alongside my kids or the family, the lifestyle that I want. And I want autonomy, and I want to make my own decisions, I want to be in control. And then they say, and I want to raise money. And I say, well, all that's going to go out the window, possibly. Suddenly you're answering to someone else. And a lot of people are under the misconception that investors are mentors, which generally they're not. But when I say, how long do you want to do this? If it's 5 years and flip it, then fine, raise the money. But when people say 20 years, 30 years, the rest of my life, I say, how old are you? Then suddenly it gives you perspective, and you say, then what's the rush? And if you can do it without raising money and have 100% control, there are other ways to raise money, of course, crowdfunding, there are some interesting options. But generally, slowly can be holy. Slowly is holy at times. You don't have to be in a rush. Getting there first doesn't mean you're going to get there and be the best. You've always got competition coming, and dealing with the competition question is another problem, but it isn't about getting there first. It's about a well thought through idea that's well executed.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. Please, can you thank me in joining our guests? We do have time for 2 quick questions. I know Philip's got a dash as you're up from the wall this evening. So 2 quick questions. Who wants to go first? Let's go for you here.
Yeah, I know Hi, my name is Tina, and I make plant-based tea lattes. And I know today we talked a lot about how did you guys screw up. but what are some things that you're very proud of and that you want to share with us, like your successes?
Am I first again?
Yeah.
Go.
I'm super proud of everything. Like, obviously, it's gone really well. So, like, we made a decision early on that everything was going to be homemade. Like, we were going to make our own chips, particularly when we started Hessen Blumenthal, just done the whole triple cooked chip thing, and we were like, got to be triple cooked, and little did we know how difficult that would be. But I remember opening in Brixton Market, which is our first one, which is the size of like a shoebox, and we were hand cutting chips, triple cooking them in that restaurant, and it was getting busier and busier and busier. And we it was got to the point where we were like, can we really do this? And in the same week, we had Jay Rayner wrote something in the Sunday Times. He described our chips as edible crystal meth. And then, yeah, it was good, yeah. And then the owner of Byron Burger, a guy called Tom Bing, came in to check us out. And he was a nice guy, complimentary in a way, but he came up to me and Tom, to our faces, and said that it wasn't possible to make your own chips for a brand if you're going to get bigger. So, like, for me and Tom, we were like, if you say that to me and Tom, we're a bit like... so that was all the incentive we needed. Like Jay Rayner saying that and Tom Bing saying we couldn't do it, we were like, we absolutely can do it. So off the back of that, we got ourselves a little prep kitchen. We managed to convince a coffee roastery to give us a little corner of their roastery, and we put fries in there, and we just committed to it properly. And then now we've had like 4 sort of central kitchens now, and because of that, 95% of our menu is homemade. So it's probably the best decision we ever made, but it is a nightmare. I mean, it takes us 8 hours a day every day to do enough chips, and the potato is a fickle beast. It's a nightmare.
Renée?
It's a nice question. I'm proud of always following my heart, being in integrity, being values-led and commercially driven, and showing that values-led business is good business. And my commitment to trying to leave the world a better place than with my life than just passing through.
You know, we had a foundation in Lonely Planet that sort of put money back into the places that we did books about. And when we sold the business, we couldn't say, you know, you've also, by the way, bought a philanthropic foundation. So we pulled it out, and quite a lot of the money we got from selling it, we put into it and made it a separate foundation, which my daughter helps to run. And we've got about 70 projects in the developing world, education, health, children, this sort of thing, but which I'm proud of. But really, you know, the thing I'm most proud of is the fact that we sort of introduced the world to a lot of people. And I really love, you know, I'm a great fan of the gap year. I think kids who go off on a gap year, they learn more in that gap year than they did in the last 3 years of school, and they will in the next 3 years of university. You know, it's a real education. And I love it when, you know, young people come back and say, hey, you know, I went out there and your book sort of opened doors for me and showed me things. Fantastic.
Great question. Yeah, let's go ahead.
So just on the subject of retail, so I've heard that 16 stores on the high street are closing every single day in the UK alone. A question for Renée is, obviously you set it up in the 90s, Planet Organic. Would you do it today, bearing in mind the prices today? And for Philip, how did you conquer that beast, essentially? It's cripplingly expensive.
I would do it again, and I don't think retail's dying, but I never believe what a lot of people think. Just because a lot of people think something doesn't mean it's a fact. And I think there's always room for good business doing a good thing. And Planet isn't just about selling product, it's about sustainability and it's about community. So I think if the values are right, I wanted to shop in Planet Organic, and I figured there were enough people out there who wanted to shop the way I wanted to shop. So that may be naive, but I would still do it again. And it's about the customer experience. It's about everything that we're doing. It's not any one thing. You know, we're not just retailers. We did campaigning for organic. We fought GM. We raised consciousness about food. I work in schools with the Soil Association on food. It's the whole thing. So it's not narrow. It's part of a bigger piece.
Question. Yeah, I mean, we started a business during the recession, really, sort of the aftermath of the recession. I think people always want to eat out, generally. And I think what we discovered, well, this is my theory on it. I think when that all happened and people sort of started having less money to spend, I think it didn't stop them going out, it just made them more conscious of how they spent their money. And I think what you've seen in London now with the food scene is this kind of street food, people like us graduating out of street food. And what street food is this is the thing that we do really well. We're specialists in burgers, or you've got the specialists in pizzas, or bao, or ramen. You know, you're seeing this now, and it's cheap, you know, it's good value for money, it's a meal, great quality, and you know, that's how people eat now. I think the whole Michelin star thing kind of, it will come back, everything kind of goes in revolutions, obviously, but I think people got a bit like, well, it's kind of good, but it's expensive, and it's the same, and, you know, actually, I think how people want to spend their money now is like, I'll give you 15 quid and give me the best burger out there, and that's certainly what we built a business on down in Brixton, and I think you're seeing that with cool brands like, you know, Flatiron doing their steak, and, you know, the ramen guys, Saputo, and places like that, you know, just doing really good, simple things. So I think we kept it simple. It was probably our biggest strength. And now we're just trying to learn from other people's mistakes. I know that sounds really terrible, but in terms of rolling out now, we're trying not to do what people do when they grow a chain restaurant. You know, we're not going to take big glass box sites in new cities with crazy rents. We're going to try and be a bit more humble. I mean, we had a bit of a thing the other day about, you know, Westfield came across our radar, and I think I was on holiday when that property meeting happened, but when I got wind of it, I was like, hell no, we're not going to Westfield, you know, like, I mean, we'd make a hell of a lot of money if we went to Westfield, but from a brand point of view, it doesn't feel right for us yet. So we're just trying to be a bit clever around the sites we pick. And we've always been quite lucky because of the way we set up in Brixton, and a few others, like Camden was number 3, and that's in a market. We can go into the smaller units and make some money. Whereas what you see with a lot of restaurants, you know, again, you've all probably read about Jamie's Italian, but I think their model relied on being in huge, big cover restaurants, and actually the business now isn't out there. I think the real stress is that, you know, things like Deliveroo, for example, are a real curveball that no one's really got their head around yet. And I think some restaurants kind of grabbed it with both hands, and that's a bit of a drug that if you get hooked on it not as a customer, but as a retailer or a vendor, then it can be quite dangerous. And I think that's what you're seeing now is quite a lot of people, the way people eat now has changed, certainly in various places. So we've just tried to be a bit smarter now. We've pulled out of quite a few sites in the last year that we probably would have done 2 or 3 years ago, that we're just like, that's a bit smarter. But, you know, look, we don't have all the answers. We're kind of figuring it out a little bit as we go along. There's a lot of headwinds coming. It's interesting the way you talk about BSE and E. coli being like things, they're like swear words in our company. Like, awesome for you, not so good for us, right? So the whole vegan thing is coming. You know, we do a plant-based burger now, and we did that thinking it's a great product, Beyond Meat. I don't know if any of you have tried the Beyond Meat burger, but it's insane. It's not homemade, and it was a real battle for us. We wrestled with it for ages. We're like, but it's the best in class, and there's no way we can make our own yet. Watch this space. And we put that on thinking it would be kind of popular, and like we were the first place you get in the whole UK. Beyond Meat kind of asked us to launch it for them, and for about 3 months we'd have people calling us up every day, being like, "I'm coming up from Bournemouth, can I reserve one?" And we're like, "Holy shit!" It's like, and now it's across the whole company, and it's like 15% of our burger sales already. 18% of our burger sales. So I've gone off on a tangent there, but yeah, there's things that are definitely changing. You have to grapple with, but we need to make our own plant-based burger. We're on it.
Continue to finish off, I guess.
You know, bookshops, which Lonely Planet still, you know, a certain percentage of the business is digital, but paper books are still an important part of it. And there was this feel, you know, Amazon's going to take over everything. The big chains, Borders and so on are going to be everywhere. You know, the small independent bookshop hasn't got a hope. But actually, the small independent bookshops, a lot of them are doing very well. They've really bounced back. They've survived when the big guys have fallen over. And, you know, and a lot of it is doing all sorts of other things as well. Having a cafe, making good coffee, putting on talks and things. You know, they've survived. And I love just browsing around in bookshops, and a lot of other people do as well.
Thank you. Well, we wish we had more time, but just before we finish, we have a massive thank you firstly to WeWork for hosting us this evening. If you are looking for office space, there are colleagues here at the end. We have some fantastic entrepreneurs coming on the podcast. We have founders from Spotify, Netflix. We even have a co-founder of Facebook, which is soon to be announced. But please can you join me in a massive thank you again for our guest speakers for coming this evening.
Thank you.